Hi, and welcome to the BookishStitcher podcast. My name is Jeanette. You can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and Goodreads as BookishStitcher all in word. This, as you probably can tell from the time, is going to be a shorter podcast because I am completely exhausted. We did the 24-hour read-a-thon with my family this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. My son wants to do it all the time now. He absolutely loved it. And so I got the least sleep of anybody. My son fell asleep first, and then my husband fell asleep, and I was up most of the night. And I think it has to do with I was reading kind of a kid's scary book, but when you're reading any kind of level of scary book at nighttime, it tends to keep you up more. So I picked a good book to kind of keep me awake for the most of the read-a-thon. But so I am very tired, so it's going to be pretty short, but let's get right into it. I have a finished object to share with you this week. I'm going to take a drink. I have just some water in my Marauders map Harry Potter mug. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. I was going to make some bedtime tea, but I was like, it'll take too long to just start the podcast because it's pretty late already. But this is the River Mist cowl. I knitted out of two colors of Malabrigo, and I don't remember what they are right now because my brain is gone. A brown and a pink, and this is going to be a Christmas present for my daughter's kindergarten teacher, whoever she may be. We find out that in a couple weeks because right now we're entering the really busy time where we have to buy school supplies, we had to buy uniforms, because even though my kids go to, I guess it's public, but it's a charter school, so they still have to get uniforms and stuff like that, and yeah, buying school supplies and meet the teachers, and it's just a very busy time of year. And so this is done, and I really was thinking about it. I've gotten so many of my Christmas presents for people already completed for this year's. And that's really nice because I won't have the rush at the end. Now there's still a ton of ends to weave in on this. The epic journey of that has begun, but it is not finished. And I think this will be a gorgeous Christmas present for somebody. I will have to, of course, wash and gently block it just to bring out these expanded stitches. But it was a really fun pattern, and it's done out of worsted weight on size 7 needles, or I did it on size 7, so I think that it would go pretty fast if you had a lot of time to just dedicate to it. And then the next thing, this is going to be my goal for this next week. I'm going to get out of this white slip stitch pattern part and get into the next color, because I have had this ashbourne shawl on the needles for so long, and I feel like I'm not making any progress. I don't know, a couple inches down last time you saw it, but the reason at first why I wasn't making any progress on this was because every time I would have a mistake, I would get to the end and the slip stitches didn't exactly match where it was supposed to be. I would rip out the entire thing, and I discovered that it's not hard enough to keep my attention on it, but it's not easy enough to where I can just do it without making any mistakes. But then as soon as I gave up trying to have all the slip stitches be perfect, it's gone a little bit faster. And this is all that I have left of the white. So I'm almost there. I think 2 or 3 more repeats, and then I will get to add in this blue, which I love. It's called Perfect Day, and I'm very excited to do that and to have this off the needles because it has been on the needles for forever. And then in my fat squirrel bag, this is a giant bag, and I think that it's going to hold the sweater pretty well. I made my goal on this. I finished the back panel of my Paloma sweater. So that's my cat. I don't know if you can hear meowing, but normally my cat is upstairs with everybody for when I podcast, but since I'm podcasting so much later, my cat is down here hanging out with me. But this is the back, and it really is like mid-thigh level kind of like a coat, because it's a heavier yarn and it's just a wool, not superwash. It's going to be an outer, it's not next to skin soft. But this is the Paloma, and it is by Baby Cocktails, I believe, and This is some, I think it's wool organics, and they're bulky, and I believe it's the rain cloud colorway maybe, but it's really pretty. And that the back panel is done, which was the largest part that I had to do. And I did leave really long ends because I believe I have to do a 3-needle bind off for the shoulders, and I wanted to leave enough for that so I had less ends to sew in. And then I have started, just barely, the right front panel. So it has panel on the right and the left, and then a button band that is picked up to add width to the front. And it has pockets that are up next, so I don't know if I will work on, I definitely won't work on this tonight because I was kind of reading over the directions for the pockets, and it's going to require a provisional cast on and all that stuff, so I want to make sure I'm awake when I do that, because while I know how to do it, it does require some attention for me. And then the last thing is a new cast on, because this year I've been supposed to be doing designer alongs, where every month I picked a different designer and I knit a new pattern of theirs every week. And I started off going strong, I feel like, and then it just, stuff got really busy and it went down. And so there's so many whips now, and I'm not motivated to start a new thing every week knowing that I have all these past whips that need to be worked on. And I don't want to end the year with 50 something, you know, probably not that many because I could get some done, but 40. I don't want to end the year with 40 extra whips because that would be crazy. So the month of July, since it was Tour de Fleece, I entirely skipped the designer that month, which was Kate Davies, and she's a gorgeous color work designer, and I really wanted to do some of her stuff, but it's been in my queue for a while, so it'll be fine if it stays in my queue and I knit it some year in the future. You know, hopefully I've got lots of years of sweater knitting before me. And then this month for August is the Brooklyn Tweed month, and I did pick a Brooklyn Tweed pattern and cast on, and this is in a Girl Cave bag, which I love, and this is the Quay scarf. And I just finished the ribbing part, and now I'm going to be getting into the cabled section, which looks gorgeous. But this pattern called for a provisional cast on, actually, but I decided to do a cabled cast on instead, because this sweater has a cabled cast on it, because cast on it looks very neat. It's not super stretchy, but it just creates a very clean line, and it's quite easy to execute, so that's what I chose for this, and I think it looks great. And I love the little details he has built into the pattern, like the sides are I-cord so that it looks quite nice. And then I'm excited to do some cables. I think that will be a whole lot of fun. And this, I took forever. Okay, so this yarn is wound up into a giant ball. This is 2 skeins attached, because I originally was using this yarn to knit my son a vest, and for some reason my gauge swatched when I actually started knitting it. I apparently was very stressed when I did my gauge swatch, and then was very relaxed when I started knitting it because it was enormous. And so I had set it aside and put it somewhere to to frog it and to reball it up and everything, that I could not remember where I'd set it aside. I thought that I had put it somewhere specifically inside my stash, like my cabinet or something, and so I looked there, I was looking everywhere, and then I was kind of convinced that I had gifted this, because I recently went through and looked at a couple of my yarns and was like, okay, I'm never going to use these. They're super old, and I gifted this to some of my local knit night friends. But I was like, maybe I gifted this, maybe after the sweater debacle I was so unhappy and didn't ever want to see this yarn again, or the sweater vest. But I searched for like 2 hours, and I finally found it in a basket that needs ends. It needs ends woven in, and it was at the bottom of that, still not quite frogged. But yeah, it's so funny how there are certain things that I at least am so very organized about, and then other things, like if they don't quite fit in a proper category and they would be something unto themselves, like this project, I kind of just lump them in with something else and forget, and then it takes forever to find. I kept thinking, I could be knitting right now, I'm losing hours of knitting time. So this is, I feel like this is a perfect bag for this project because of the gray background. But this is also going to be another, I don't know if I said this, so tired. This is also going to be another Christmas present. This is going to go to my sister-in-law's boyfriend, who I knit the hat for him earlier this year, and I thought it's like an orange, like a burnt orange hat, so I thought that these two would pair well together, a scarf and a hat, and they just recently moved in together, so he is definitely on the knitting list for this year. And that is my new knitting. I didn't spin this week, which I need to because I need to finish up all my Tour de Fleece stuff. I've not been on Ravelry on the podcast group much this week. We had just a lot of stuff going on, and I don't even remember. I just remember that this felt like a very busy week. And I know, well, we went and did stuff with friends, a lot of it. We've just been getting to really see friends recently, and that's been wonderful. My kids have been loving it because sometimes I am such an introvert that I don't want to go out and hang out a lot with people, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, let's do this. So we've been doing like the dollar movies with friends and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's been busy, and since the summer is ending in a couple weeks with school starting, it's fun that they're getting to see a lot of friend time now. And yeah, so that's all the knitting and all the spinning that hasn't been done. And there's a giveaway up in the podcast group right now on Ravelry. Like I said, I haven't been on there, but I'm going to give it another week. I desperately need to reply to my Ravelry messages because I think there are some from early July that I haven't replied to back when we had my in-laws here. So I've got to get on and reply to those. And hopefully that will happen this next week. There's nothing I can think of off the top of my head that should keep that from happening, because all the friends and stuff that we had here recently are now going back to their parts of the world. But yeah, so since I did the read-a-thon this weekend, I did film some footage of it, and I put a little clip on Instagram, and I did different things of it. I am hoping to get together a actual 10-minute video of the read-a-thon and put it up separately other than like a podcast, but that might be a little while because adding music and clipping together stuff takes a really long time. But we had the three of us participating, my husband and my son and I, and it was noon to noon, Saturday to Sunday. And my daughter, who's 5 and does not read really well, she knows a couple words, but she doesn't read. She was the cheerleader. She was so cute. She would go and get people water, get them snacks. She would, be like, "You're doing good, keep it up." She loves to cheer people on. But I started out at noon, and we each had a stack of books that we wanted to get through. My husband chose the series Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper, which I think he had like the inside track to winning this. He didn't, but because he chose a series, so there was no getting in on a new world building, right, or getting to know new characters, because every book was just a continuation of the last. So he didn't have that part where a book is slower at the beginning because you're getting to know the characters. My son is just the fastest reader in the world. He's the super fast knitter, he's the super fast reader, he's just amazing at whatever he does. He's been reading since he was 3, and I mean actual chapter book reading, not where some kids at the age of 3 have kind of memorized their favorite books and can spout it back to you. He could read at 3. And so he's been a very big reader, and this is the first year we've done anything like this, and we're going to definitely do it more because he just loved it so much. So he chose different books he needed to read for school, or books that I had said that he should read, or my husband and I wanted him to read because they were classic, amazing books, and then he had picked some of his favorite series. And I picked out books that I thought would be good to read all in one setting, to get completely immersed in the book. And then I also picked ones where I had seen the movie, so I thought it would go faster. So for my first book, I had 5 and I only got to 3. But I picked Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Smith, and last fall, I believe this movie came out on Netflix, and I had never read the book, and I never really heard of the movie or anything, but it was up there, and I've always been obsessed with the 60s. I was born in the 80s, mid-80s, but I've always been obsessed with the 60s. I don't know why. It's just a time period that has always really appealed to me and has always held a lot of interest for me. So I watched that movie and I absolutely loved it, and I became kind of obsessed with it and watched it a whole bunch of times. And so I got this book and I've been wanting to read it. And this is the 50th anniversary edition, and it has this really cool inside cover where it's pictures of Jacqueline Susan from different publicity stuff that she had done for the book. It has some extra things in it about her life, which I read. I always read those. And I don't know. Okay, so I felt like the movie had this element of hope in it at the end. Yes, there were some horrible things that happened, but I felt like the main character and so the movie and the book deal around, I guess you could say 4, but I would say 3 main characters, 3 women, who one of them is Anne, who has decided to leave her small town to come to New York to just get away from all the small townness. Another one is a young girl named Neely, who has an amazing voice and is destined for stardom. And another one is Jennifer, who is basically catapulted to stardom because of her looks. And she's always been told that, like, that's all her value was from her parents always told her, you're only worth as much as your looks. And so it's about those 3 women, and then there's kind of a side main character of an older woman named Helen, who has been in the business for a while. But Anne in the movie goes and she experiences all this horrible stuff in the Valley of the Dolls, which is a term. Dolls are the term for pills that were taken, uppers and downers, and I don't know all the terms, but stuff to help you sleep, stuff to help you lose weight, stuff to help you keep you awake, stuff to take the anxiety off. And in the movie at the end, spoiler alert, Anne gets out of all of it, and you feel hopeful for her that she has made it out. The book was so much more bleak. I finished this and I just felt no hope at all. I gave it a 4 stars on Goodreads because I felt that it was well written and it really did elicit a strong emotion from me, but I just felt like, oh man, it was depressing, and it didn't have that element of hope. And there are certain characters in the movie, like Neely, as she becomes a star, she just tramples over people. And while that's not so horrible to have to watch in a movie that's shorter, but reading about it for a prolonged time in a book was I really didn't like that character in the book. And which, that means the author did a good job writing her if it just made me livid every time Neely would do anything, because Neely was just an awful, awful person. But yeah, I felt that the book was really well written, and I know that this is like a book, I posted a picture on Instagram and a lot of people said that they read it in college in the 60s and it like brought back memories. And so I think this is an iconic book from that time period. If you were alive in the 60s and not like an infant and wouldn't remember, but if this was like an iconic book that was well known, then I would love to kind of hear about that in the comments, either on the YouTube or on the Ravelry group. Just kind of love to kind of get a feel for if it was a mega hit at the time then or not, and just kind of how this book played into the culture kind of stuff. And I think it is true to an extent that celebrity culture is very different, and you do feel like they do feel a lot of pressure to look a certain way and look nice, and more people will want to watch their movies or want to I don't know, read their books or whatever if they are pretty or young or different things like that. It does seem to be a culture that you encounter a lot in all aspects of different things like that. So I finished this up late on Saturday night, and then I immediately moved into The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And I like Neil Gaiman's books so much. I've read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, Neverwhere, Coraline, unfortunately The Milk. I have yet to read American Gods, but I really want to. And this book had me from the beginning just like, what is going on? Because it begins with, there was a hand in the darkness and it held a knife. And it goes on to just like, now there are a couple pictures in here at the beginning of a chapter, but we did have a rule, no graphic novels. It couldn't be like a picture book. But most, like the vast majority of this book is just this. There's just 1 or 2 pictures at the beginning of each chapter. And I loved at the end, I read every single different part of this, but at the end they had his acceptance speech of the Newbery Medal, how he found out that he won it, and his little acceptance speech of it. And that was really interesting to read. But I loved this book a lot. I think I gave it a 5 stars on Goodreads. I just thought that it might have been the time of day that I was reading it, or time of night, because I started this around 10 p.m. and shortly after midnight, I think, my son fell asleep. I thought that he was going to stay up the whole night, because whenever he goes to slumber parties with friends, he's up the whole night. My friends are always telling me, your son didn't go to sleep. But he only made it till midnight. And then my husband kind of fell asleep after my son did. We were all down here at the couch. And I felt relaxed, but I just didn't feel sleepy because we had been just kind of lounging around all day, so I didn't have like, we hadn't been out running around and doing stuff, so I didn't have like a tiredness of being out. Like, since I'm an introvert, this kind of reading stuff is more charging to me than if we had been out all day seeing friends and stuff. That would have been more draining to me and I would have been more tired. But just sitting reading in a book all day, I wasn't tired. So I think it was a little bit after 3 and I found myself still reading, and everybody around me is asleep. And so I entered my page number on Goodreads like 3 a.m. and then I tried to go to sleep, but I kept having flashbacks of, this book was kind of, I was almost done with it. I had less than 100 pages, I think, but there was crazy stuff going on in the graveyard, and I kept like hearing stuff in the dark. Which is silly, but I kept hearing stuff in the dark and I wasn't able to fall asleep for almost an hour. So I got about, and then I set an alarm for 7 a.m. to get back up and read. So I got about 3.5 hours of sleep. My son got a little over 7, and my husband got probably, I don't know, 5, maybe? But yeah, so we all woke up and we read some more. My husband almost got through the entire Darkest Rising series. I got through that book. This book, I read 60 pages in another book that I already had going, and then like 140 pages in the book Wildwood, which I started, which is another kid's book, kind of similar to Labyrinth, I guess, where the little brother gets stolen. But oh, this Graveyard Book, it's, Neil Gaiman talks about how it's kind of like, you know, the Jungle Book where there are animals raising Mowgli. These are ghosts from a graveyard raising a child, because the beginning, the child loses his whole family because there's a knife. And that part was, I see, this says it's a kid's book. Oh, there are beautiful fireflies outside. It says it's a kid's book, but my son would not be able to read this. This book would freak him out. So, and he is a lot more sensitive than a lot of kids I know, but I just wonder, I don't know, I like some of the things on the back of here, like a bite of dark Halloween chocolate. This novel proves rich, bittersweet, and very satisfying. Wistful, witty, wise, and creepy. So there's just all kinds of, and so reading this book at night, and I just would be telling my husband around me, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening right now in this book, because I was getting, I guess, a little bit tired maybe, but it was also, there's just something really magical, and he has a lot going on, and it does, he kind of presents something to you in his writing, and then we'll explain it later after it's been going on. So anyways, I would highly recommend this book, maybe not to little kids who this would make them nervous, but to like older kids definitely, and Neil Gaiman's always wonderful. But I think that's everything I have this week. My son won the read-a-thon. I read 1,000 pages exactly. My husband read 1,060 pages, somewhere around there, and my son read almost 1,300 pages, and he got the most sleep. That boy is amazing, and we're gonna do another read-a-thon at winter break because he absolutely loved this so much. And we were saying like, what do you want for your prize? And he was like, a puppy? I'm like, no, maybe a fish, like a little goldfish in a bowl. Or he wants to go camping or something. And so they're still working out what his prize would be. Somebody said on Instagram like that their kids get to pick dinner. So I thought that that was a great prize as well. And yeah, we'll have to figure out what he's won. But I don't think my husband or I have any hope of ever beating him in a read-a-thon. He's just always going to beat us. We'll have to see how well my daughter, like when she gets older, how fast her speed is, and see if she can dethrone her brother at the read-a-thon. But if you've never done that, just I guess with yourself or with like as a couple or as a family, it was a lot of fun, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge like knockdown, drag them out competition, because I was very chill about it, as I am with any. I don't really get competitive because I find that it just, you know, it's not a good vibe, I guess. But I still had fun, even though I knew that I wasn't going to win, and my son was very happy. He's super competitive. He was very happy that he did win. So it was a great family activity and something that was wonderful to do in the summer here in Texas when it is so hot. And I haven't really been wanting to knit. I am hoping that in about a month the cooler weather here will start and I will be bitten by the bug of wanting to have wool in my lap and just be surrounded by wool and knit all the wonderful things. But right now I am only knitting at night when the air conditioning is on, because we don't really keep the air conditioning on much during the day. So that's about it. But yeah, that's everything. Until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful week and you get to do all the things you love. Okay, bye guys.